If you've got a question, the voices of resin are here. Oh, PlastChicks.
PlastChicks is an SPE sponsored podcast.
Hello. Hey, girl. Hey.
Hello. How's it going?
Good. Probably better than you.
It is absolutely going better than me because I am finishing up my COVID quarantine.
Yeah.
So I am free to leave the house tomorrow, but we are still not allowed to have a nanny in the house to wrangle my children. So it is just pure chaos here.
I would love to see the Lynzie Nebel My Three Sons COVID edition TV show sitcom.
It's really just a lot of screaming, jumping off stuff, saying, no, don't do that. Saying, hey, where'd your pants go? You know, that kind of stuff.
So like a normal day at the office.
A normal day, just like, but nobody leaves.
Well, anyway, I am Mercedes Landazuri. I am Director of Technology Innovation at Peacock Colors and Vortex Liquid Color.
And I am Lynzie Nebel. I am an upstream hardware quote engineer for Cytiva, and I am on the executive board as the Vice President of Membership Engagement.
You know, me too. I'm on SPE boards as well. Totally.
For sure.
I am. And with our powers combined, we are PlastChicks, the voices of resin.
Look at us. And so today we have a guest, which is also a blast from the past. It's not Throwback Thursday, but you know what? Close enough. So today we brought on one of my college buddies. And actually, Dave, I think you might be the first college buddy I've...
Nope. Oh, wait, yes. I was going to say, but you didn't go to college with that guy that in Erie that we had talked to at the golf outing.
No.
Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
I mean, I did, but he was a year younger. But you were a first classmate of mine that we're bringing on. So this is finally Dr. Dave White. He is the founder and CEO of ExtruPharm. And as we're recording, the one kid that can get through...
Hey, Henry.
Where's your dad? He's supposed to be watching you.
Hey, Henry, say hi to all of our podcast, our 6,000 downloaders.
Well, this is Henry. Okay. I literally told your dad to watch you starting at 7. So
for everybody who's listening and I don't know if we want to edit this part out, but Lindsay's son Henry is here.
You want to show them your bat jammies. Okay.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Okay.
Spooky. Getting in the holiday spirit.
Okay. Well.
Okay.
That sounds fun. And that is just a snippet of how my course has gone.
So do you want to, Lindsay, do you want to start? So maybe they want to cut that part out.
Yeah. So today we actually have an old classmate of mine. And he is the first classmate of mine. We've interviewed some Penn State alum, but this is the first guy that I actually graduated with. And we have finally Dr. Dave White. He is the founder and CEO of ExtruPharm. And his doctorate was not a 4-year thing. So Dave, if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, do a little introduction there.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. My name is David White, and I went to undergrad with Lynzie at Penn State for plastics engineering, and then moved on to UMass Lowell for my master's and finished up my doctorate after a long duration. And finally got that just a couple of years ago, and I left to go into industry for about 5 years, and then started my own company here back in 2017.
Cool. And so you are actually, you're a lot of firsts today, Dave, because I think you are the first extrusion, right? I don't think we've had any other extrusion of any sorts.
Officially.
So, yeah.
Okay.
So, you're carrying a lot of weight on your shoulders right now. So,
if you're not counting master batchers, we work in extrusion too.
Right. But we're talking I don't know, maybe. Okay. I guess, yeah. But why don't you give us kind of like the rundown of like what ExtruPharm does? Like, why is it different? Is, you know, not just injection molding? Isn't injection molding the only molding?
Sure. So the area I work in is in the pharmaceutical industry. Extrusion has been a player for many years now in the extrusion industry. It really came around for hot melt extrusion is what the pharmaceutical industry has coined the term, but it's really just traditional plastics extrusions, except if we're putting a drug into it. So they started that with like solubility enhancement. So a lot of the drugs are very crystalline in nature and therefore not bioavailable. So you'd have to eat quite a bit of this in order to get the therapeutic effect. But you still get all the bad side effects from it. So as a way to combat that, they make solid amorphous dispersions by mixing it with usually a cellulose-based amorphous polymer. And that makes it a lot more bioavailable, so you don't have to take as much. So that's really where it started. And I do some of that work as well for solubility enhancement. It's all that work's traditionally done on a twin screw extruder. But then also getting into like drug-eluting implants. It's like Nexplanon for the birth control implant, goes in the back of the arm. Products like that, but for other indications as well, we'll work on. But it's everything from initial formulation development the whole way through the steps of milling down polymer into a powder, blending that with the drug and other excipients, putting that through a twin screw for the mixing, and pelletizing that, and then taking that product and putting it through a single screw extruder or an injection molding machine, depending on what the product is going to be, to make the final shape product.
Oh,
so,
as long as it's
that's
at some point.
What's that?
It says as long as it's injection molded at some point. So you actually started off at another company doing something similar. Why did you just go out on your own? Those feel like a lot of steps to me to be like, yeah, I can do this on my own.
So yeah, you were at Foster or at Foster, is that right?
Correct. Foster Delivery Science.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you were there for about 5 years, and then you said, okay, I'm ready.
Pretty much. Yeah. There's a need in the industry. A lot of the pharmaceutical products and projects out there, they don't really have a lot of like plastics engineers on these types of products. However, they're using plastics extrusion and injection molding equipment. So that's where I really saw the opportunity and decided to start my own company focusing on that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what? So at Foster, and I'm not sure, if you're allowed to say, but at Foster, among your colleagues that you were working with on a day-to-day, were there other plastics engineers there, or were you kind of the loner?
I was the only one for plastics engineering. Well, the only one that was actually on the technical side of things. There was some from the sales and other business end of things, but from the technical side, I was the only one at that time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Same with the customers as well. They didn't really have a plastics background. They were more pharmaceutical scientists that were working in extrusion. So,
yeah. So you, well, I guess maybe tell us like why you started ExtruPharm. Like, was it you saw the opportunity there that there was such a need for the level of expertise that a plastics engineer would have to really pioneer innovation in the market?
Or did you just want to buy a ton of equipment and like just keep buying equipment?
That's kind of what I've been doing with 3D printing now.
That's a secondary aspect of it, I guess, is all the equipment I have to keep accumulating. But no, it's I wanted a position in the world where I would actually be able to make a difference in people's lives directly, hopefully. But I also have the plastics background. So, how can I combine these? And this opportune chance kind of walked into this area where you can use these same equipment I've been going to school and learning about my entire educational career, but actually use it to make pharmaceutical products that could directly impact people's lives. And it seemed like there was a lot of opportunity for making processes better or moving them further down the development path so they could actually become commercialized at some point.
Do you see a lot of companies coming to you with like former processes that are kind of rudimentary, or is everybody kind of moving in this direction, but it's kind of like the plastics industry itself where like you can sometimes stumble upon a shop and nobody knows what they're doing, but they're getting it done. But it's until you use your expertise that it's like, oh, okay, we're actually like phase 2, leveling up.
Yeah, it really depends on what kind of companies will approach me at that time. So I work with everything from very small startups and academic institutions the whole way through large pharmaceutical companies. So it depends on where they are in that development process. We work on a lot of products that will, they start with like a solvent cast process. So you're actually dissolving the polymer in a solvent with the drug to make the product. And that's how they're doing this for initial feasibility. Does the drug release at the correct rate? Are we using the right type of polymers, things like that? But they realize that making these types of implants and patches and whatnot, it's not really a feasible route forward to keep using the solvents. And so they want to move towards hot melt extrusion for its continuous manufacturing capabilities. And that's one of the big driving factors for the FDA as well. They really want this manufacturing, less batch processes. So because of that, there's, they start working, they're really focused on the drug side of things, but not so much on the plastic side of things. So how do you actually make it commercial? How do you make higher volume? How do you transition out of the solvent cast process and move it towards a extrusion process?
I mean, isn't that the age-old question for anything? How do you take it from prototype to production without absolutely destroying it?
Exactly.
Now, you guys also do cryo grinding, is that right?
Correct. So that's it turned out to be one of the larger business units of this company is cryogenic milling of polymers. So a lot of these, it really comes down to being risk adverse for the customer. A lot of these startup projects, if they start getting negative results right out of the gate because of degradation or agglomerates, they're not getting very good content uniformity. So there's spots within the device or the batch that have high drug concentration or low concentration. This could potentially end a project very quickly. So you really want to get the best possible scenario initially right out of the gate to produce good results. So to do this, instead of split feeding into like a twin screw extruder with pellets, plastic pellets, and all the other powders and drugs and whatnot that's going to go into the implant, we actually cryogenically mill the polymer down into a powder and then blend that with the powdered drug and other excipients, and then put that through the twin screw after we dry blend that. So there's been a big push for a lot of the cryogenic milling. And the big picture, that's a step in the process we would like to back out. It's just you don't want to do it initially, just because you don't want to take the chance of producing poor results.
So like on the weekends, do you get to like play around with liquid nitrogen and do fun tricks and like make really quick?
I'm like, next time I'm out your way, I need to come see your facility because it sounds like you have way more cool stuff than you even had last time we talked.
Absolutely. No, it's getting quite involved now, and now that I go through a lot of liquid nitrogen, and I've built a whole automated cryogenic milling systems to really make it hands-free and more consistent and higher throughput. So it's getting fairly advanced for the cryogenic milling.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. In a former company, I worked with a cryogenic miller that works in, as Lynzie knows, one of my favorite cities in the United States, Akron. But it was very, very cool to see some of this. I mean, they didn't do, as far as I know, they weren't doing any pharma, but did just a lot of really cool stuff that wouldn't even think about. We did a product with them.
Anytime you put liquid nitrogen in your day job,
so fun.
Okay. Like, there's not going to be a problem. So one of the things, I mean, obviously you have the plastics background. I was there, I saw you. How much do you, I mean, I know you're aiding these pharmaceutical companies, but how much do they rely on you to have some knowledge of these pharmaceuticals, or at least, can you look at a formulation now and kind of say, all right, I've had some trouble with this type, or this isn't going to disperse as well, or, or this is garbage, take it home?
Sure. To an extent, it depends on the specific areas. But if a lot of it, speaking of cryogenic milling, for example, A lot of the powders that we're going to be blending with the milled polymer, they're going to be a very small particle size, say around, estimate here, 10 to 50 micron in diameter in size. Compared to the milled polymer, we're going to want it around 500 micron. And there's always a big controversy. Well, why do we want to go that big? It'll segregate and you won't get good content uniformity. The issue is if you move forward with, this is where my kind of expertise kind of comes in here, is if you use all the same small size particles, it's not going to flow very well. So you'll have a very nice uniform blend. It's not going to segregate very easily, but you're never going to be able to get it into the extruder. It'll be too low bulk density. It won't feed in there correctly. So we actually use the larger particle size to do that, help carry the drug and other excipients into the extruder. And sometimes I do get back into the actual drug molecule itself. After trial and error, and been a pretty steep learning curve for me, but ask a lot of questions now, like, is it a dihydrate form of the drug? Is it an anhydrate? Because if there's water in there, what temperatures are going to be coming off and what temperature are we going to be extruding at? You might have quite a bit of moisture that you have to actually deal with in the removal process while it's going through the twin screw extruder. So things like that will definitely be helpful. And I have that kind of insight for the processing side of things.
So gosh, I would imagine a company like yours has to go through audits all the time. Is that the case?
So not yet, not so much. Only because it's right now it's very initial phase, so it's all R&D development work. So no samples will go into people,
Gotcha.
No clinical batches, anything like that. So just doing a lot of R&D work and proof of concept, and then scaling that up and transferring those processes either to another contract manufacturer or into the customer's location, and then working on purchasing the equipment and specifying the equipment, training staff, things like that, so they can handle it themselves. So at some point when I do move to GMP manufacturing, yes, there'll be lots of audits and it'll be an everyday event, it seems, but not right now at least.
Yeah, I mean, I have to imagine that auditing part of it, I don't think I would ever want to get involved in that. Like, I'm just going to stay in this world. When you do hand over, these projects back to their, whatever company, either the original company or the companies that buy it, or, whatever it may be, what level of it is kind of a, here you go, don't touch this kind of handover, and how much, how much faith do you have in some of these people that are taking over these projects, but don't necessarily have the background you do?
So it really depends. It depends on the particular project and the company and where it's going to be going. But a lot of times they might have, they're hiring operators because they've never had this equipment before. They don't even own it yet. So we're purchasing the equipment and specifying it. And I try to make it scalable and use some of the best equipment out there so that they're not going to have issues. And then we basically just mimic that process. We'll duplicate it, buy all the new GMP pharmaceutical version of the equipment, and we'll already have specified in batch records the screw configuration, the RPM, temperature profiles, all the details. That's all fully documented. So at the very end, they get that at minimum. That's what they have purchased, and that's theirs to take with and do what they want with it. But they can also, this usually happens more often than not, they'll actually hire me on a consulting basis to do trainings or to be there for initial batches. They go in and just troubleshoot if they're having issues, anything like that, to make sure they're able to produce the product in a consistent manner and they're able to get what they want every single time. So it really depends on the particular company and where they are.
So how many projects can you handle at a time? Like this feels like so much work. I mean,
how many, I mean, you started like 3-4 years ago, almost 4 years ago. How many people did you have starting? I mean, you're wearing the iconic CEO uniform of my hometown, San Francisco. Just for everybody listening, he's wearing a t-shirt and a hoodie. Classic CEO in California. When you started, how did that? Can you talk about that process and how many people you employ? And then to Lindsay's question.
Yeah. How
Sure.
do you do it all now?
So I started, it was just me, and it still is me currently. So there's no other employees at this time. I was trying to hire during COVID because I actually saw a pretty good spike in business at that time. However, it has been difficult to hire employees and technicians in that field since then. So it's still me for now, but working on growing here very shortly and improving that. For the amount of projects at any given time, it depends on what phase they are in. So some of these projects, some are very quick. Get a phone call, and within 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we're actually milling polymer or starting some studies. Other times, it seems more often than not, it's about a 3 to 9 month lead time before, by the time I hear from a customer and they, we have an idea, we want to try this, to the time we're actually starting the project. It's usually between, say, 6 or 9 months, sometimes even longer. Sometimes it's just over a year. And sometimes that has to do with purchasing certain equipment. So if I need dies that are specific for that particular project, or other equipment for it, usually lead times or getting materials in. So you have to wait as they all come in, and you get them scheduled, and everything's going to be on hand, and move forward with it. But I guess at any given time, probably 6 to 12 projects. But you're not always doing hands-on work with all of them. Some of them you're just tracking purchase orders or placing orders.
None of this computes. Like, I don't understand how, so you actually are running extruders.
Yes.
And you are doing the cryo milling.
Yes.
Alone.
Yes.
And you're doing everything. I was not prepared for that. I feel like such a slob in my life. How do you, I should just go home. This is insane.
It all depends on what the project is at the time. I try to, by default, have to build a lot of my own equipment and design a lot of it. So the dies and whatnot, people help design it. So I know I'm not going to have issues with certain extrusion aspects, like the cryogenic milling. I built this entire self-contained, fully automated system where I load the polymer, I start it up, it takes like half an hour, and then it runs. So I just have to be in the room with it.
You're not machining your own dies or anything, are you?
No.
Okay.
Good. I was about to be so pissed.
Like, yeah, of course you are.
You're Dave, you're like that person, like, at Fisherman's Wharf, who is playing like 7 different instruments like at once, and like with a smile on their face. So, like, I'm just completely blown away.
It's much easier because I really love what I do. So, it's a passion of mine, and that makes it that much easier. But it can be a bit daunting at times with how much workload there is, but getting through it for now.
So how much, so how many hours do you think you work in a given week?
It really depends, because this is very much project based. For the longest time, it was, feast or famine, right? So it's get paid intermittently, and the projects come intermittently. But so there was a bit of downtime, but that gives me time to design equipment or to help buy a lot of used equipment and then refurb it to get it up and running. So doing those kind of things in the downtime. So it really just depends on the particular workload at the time and how fast a customer might need a product. So there's times they get rush orders, and you're putting in 12-hour days, day after day after day. But all depends on what the needs are at the time.
Wow.
So here's the obvious question. How did COVID impact? What did your workload look like?
It was fairly interesting and not what I expected originally. So a lot of my larger pharmaceutical customers, they have these ongoing projects where I was doing some work, but not a ton of work on the project at any given moment. They're doing a lot more in-house. I was more of a consulting or designing things or buying products for them to run at their location. However, a lot of them during COVID, they all had stay-at-home orders. However, their projects, their timelines didn't change. So I have a lot of projects that got shifted to me to carry on while they're all still working from home.
Oh, wow.
And it kind of worked out.
Very COVID friendly environment you have there if you're the only one there.
That's it. I started my company in a tech incubator, and I was the very first company there. And at the time, throughout COVID, it's now pretty much filled up with other companies at the time, but right now. But I was the only tenant in there. So if I stayed at home, I'm in isolation. If I go to work, I'm in isolation. So that really worked out to my advantage at that point.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So are you still in the same space, or you're in a different space?
I am still in the same space, at least for now. And I'm pretty full at this moment with the amount of equipment and space that I'm using. But yeah, it's another year, maybe 2, although I doubt it. I'll be already looking for a new place to move into. So I'm already looking at commercial property, buildings, land. So.
Are you going to get an employee or a new building first?
Employees, definitely.
That feels like the better move. I'm here to tell you, go that route first before you double in size.
So are you able to, I mean, are the other companies now that are in this incubator, are they like-minded? I mean, are you able to recruit away employees from the other companies, or
someone just walks
or individuals, you know?
It's pretty diverse. Nothing that is like what I do for extrusion or really plastics oriented, but there's several other medical device companies in there working on interesting projects, cancer related projects, and just new optics sensors and things like that. So it's pretty diverse, but not a lot of direct collaboration yet, or working together on projects yet.
How did you find out about the incubator, and why did you choose to start there?
Sure. So one, I found it from there's actually a phone app, to kind of like Zillow, but it's for commercial property called LoopNet. The owner of the building, he actually had it advertised on there, and it looked quite nice. It seemed like it presented well. It used to be an old elementary school, which was he purchased once it was closed down, converted it into his a medical device company working on optics and things like that, like endoscopes and whatnot. And then he was converting his business, his whole building that he purchased, is already set up with a clean room and whatnot downstairs, a little machine shop. So he just wanted to basically stop his commercial side of the business and then open it up as a tech incubator, since it's already set up that way, and just started renting things out. So when I found it, and I had an excellent price point for where it was at, and then I brought in actually a couple of the customers that I was working with on a consulting basis. So that's what I did in 2017. I consulted for 1 year. Then I opened up the location I have now in 2018, exactly 1 year later. So I had a couple customers I brought in and made sure they would look at it and they were comfortable having that kind of building and location for this business. And just everyone gave their approval basically. So that's what was the deciding factor to move in there.
So what are, I mean, I know you can't get into specifics, but what are some of like the coolest things you're working on, or some of the unexpected, like besides just like, I make drugs?
Sure. Some of it's just the indication. So, what are they trying to address? Why do they want to make a product, and for what purpose, right? So work on all kinds of areas, like nerve growth, like severed nerves, trying to have those grow back together correctly and more efficiently. Wound healing and new kind of films to replace things like gauze. Gauze is actually, it's a very old product, and you put it in an open wound and it's not the nicest and easiest to work with, right?
I feel like if you could use it in the Civil War, it's probably time for an update.
Exactly. So, working on new products like that, where they have like a thin film that might have a component in there to help accelerate the healing process. A lot of women's health products, it turns out, whether it be birth control or other applications there. Anti-HIV treatments as well, trying to get a long duration active that's going to be continuously absorbed by the patient, so they don't have to worry about taking medication every single day. And then on the smaller scale of things, any kind of ocular treatments, it turns out that getting drugs into the brain or eyeball is quite challenging. So trying to get products that can actually get the drug where they need to be. Yeah, it really depends. It's a very wide array of products that I work on.
Wow, that's fascinating. It was just I'm totally blown away.
Well, especially like I know when I worked in micromedical, we did some like bioabsorbables, and we did one one project I remember that was like a pharmaceutical grade, and I just remember that material was so expensive, and like
Yeah,
I remember like seeing it in the fridge, and I was like, I would be like, and like shimmy around it. So I'm like, I'm not going near it. I'm not gonna be the one that's like sleeve catches it and like slams it down to the ground. Like I want to be nowhere near this material. It is so expensive. I am terrified of it. Goodbye.
Yeah, some of it can be very expensive. Even the medical polymers that we're using, you've used as well. I mean, they're upwards of like nowadays, I think they're like $2,800 to $3,200 per kilo just for the polymer.
oh,
But
polypropylene will be there in a a few months if this continues. No, I'm just kidding.
Just give it a little bit more time.
With all these supply chain issues, it's kind of leveling out.
but the drug itself, I mean, it could be depending on if it's a commercially available product or is it something that a company, the little lab created themselves, or if it's a biologic or things like that. It really depends on the price point. But some of the drugs I've worked on, they're up to 200,000 per kilo, so it can be very expensive in that regard. So
Wow.
they always want to use very small batches. I've had customers call up before and ask me, we have 50 grams of material. It's already blended with a polymer. They want to have 3 different processes run out of that and each one have a 50% yield. And so you have to get pretty inventive in order to try and make that small of a product and actually produce a sample that's worthwhile for them to test. But
Cutting it with baby powder. Or is that a different drug? Boom, look at me. It's the THC, TCBY argument all over. Oh boy.
This was Lynzie was talking about a bath soak salt that she had gotten from a friend of hers, I think, and it was a CBD thing and she was calling it THC.
I don't know, and I couldn't think of CBD, and I just wanted to say TCBY, which is a yoga place. So,
and when she told me her new company that she was working for, she called it sativa. So I have my suspicions about.
I mean, it's sativa. Sorry,
sativa.
I got the Midwestern.
Close. It was just like very, very much on the heels of the other conversation.
My Midwestern accent. He's got the same accent. Actually, his is more Pittsburghy.
Probably.
Yeah. So what took you? Oh, are you from Pittsburgh?
Butler, PA. So 45 minutes north of Pittsburgh.
Danny's hometown.
Yep.
Oh, wow. So what, I mean, it was funny to see too, when I was looking at your CV or your LinkedIn, see you go from Penn State to Lowell, because Lynzie, talks a lot of trash. Obviously, there's just a handful, as you mentioned, of plastics institutions, right?
Options for grad school.
Yeah.
It's especially if you want to do plastics engineering. I think it is the only plastics engineering for grad school.
Well, Akron, actually taking it back to, don't they have they have master's program, right?
Well, anything like, I don't think it's called plastics engineering. It's polymer science. Lowell's the only master's and doctorate program for plastics engineering. I don't think anyone else has one. I'm almost positive of that. Someone could surprise me, but I'm almost positive.
So question for you, to really put you on the spot here. If there were an Antec and the Penn State networking event was on the same night as the Lowell alum networking event, which one do you choose?
An easy answer.
I would try to hit both. Split
hey,
it if I could.
That's not the answer.
I'm just trying to piss Lynzie off here.
It's the Penn State one. There's a lot more booths there. or I believe ours is usually like stationed at the bar. That might be because I put myself there, but Whatever. Oh boy. And one more thing I wanted to hit before we wrap up is, you said you started a nonprofit to help like early stage projects kind of get their samples out there, kind of walk them through it. What is that? Like, how do people even find that?
So it's actually not started yet. However, it's been an idea I've been working on for a while. So it's still in the concept phase, but that is the plan is to start a nonprofit to help fund these smaller projects. Where this came from was several times over my career. I've been working on quoting projects, and it's a small startup, or it might be an individual. I might have a fantastic idea. The issue is they can't get funding or investors yet until they actually show some good results. Mm-hmm. So there was one project I was working on. Well, I was working on quoting, and it came in right around. It was expensive for what it was. It was like $150,000 for the initial work to get them samples the whole way through. I think it's like this. It's their second phase of testing. That was going to be far too much for them. They told us, and they couldn't do work. But it seemed like such a great idea. I actually spent more time to try and get it, the cost down and down and down, and getting free materials and people to help out in different areas. Because if they can make these samples, again, the funding will come in, this product could then be made and make it to commercial and actually be helping people. However, I got that project the whole way down to, I think, around $18,000 for just a couple small prototypes. And that was still going to be too much for their initial development work. So that's where this idea comes from. Could we be raising money and putting money towards these smaller projects, and then once they get some initial samples and get some good data, then they'll be able to go get investors, then they'll be able to get more funding coming in, and they can be able to take it down the line towards production even further. So I've seen just too many times good ideas and good projects just never even start just because of lack of funding. Mm-hmm. And really it doesn't take a whole lot, but it does take a bit. So that's the idea, hopefully.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty cool. I mean, yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things, like if you just polled people and you looked for people's like ideas and, whatever, obviously some people are dum-dums and have really bad ideas, but like there are really good ideas out there, and there are ideas that are actually like feasible. It's just you can't get over that first hurdle. So I think having somebody willing to work with them and help walk them through it, help get what they need and know what they need. I think that's an awesome idea.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, it just makes sense too. Like, being a smaller company, you can, you have the ability to really, make your own choices and make quick decisions, whereas a lot of these bigger companies, there's going to be a lot more red tape and a lot more decision makers, a lot more buy-in and a lot more, cost benefit analysis or, risk analysis.
Start it now before you're big bureaucratic, Dave White.
So what, maybe just a final question. Well, maybe a couple more, but like where do you see it going, 20 years from now? Do you really want to just focus on this and grow this company? Do you think it'll branch into different pieces? Are you going to go the hoodie route and maybe try to sell it off?
Yeah, so it's definitely going to be growing, and looking at multiple avenues for producing a profit here. One of them will be the cryogenic milling, definitely moving that forward. That seems to be a larger and larger need. The longer I'm in business, seems to be just growing and growing. But another is actually working on my own individual projects at ExtruPharm. So I have a small team put together that we are working on various small concepts and ideas, and I'm producing them at my company with the entire intent of basically turning these into their own companies, which may be sold off, maybe just move the whole way through commercialization. But having multiple sources in that regard and also in the same time having the GMP capabilities. So I'll be being able to make product that will actually be able to go into people, be able to be made commercially, and have all of the regulatory requirements put in place for that. So, but that's quite the undertaking to get to the GMP phase. So that'll be a couple more years down the road, but it is moving along. Yeah, so little business ideas like that, and then even like a purge compound, like making a purge compound that is suitable for the pharmaceutical industry has been quite challenging, as one doesn't really exist yet, or if it does exist, they don't really work the best.
Huh.
There's a lot of the purge compounds out there. They're trade secrets, so they don't actually tell you everything that's in there. And then if you don't know what's in it, you can't put it on equipment that's going to be making drug products and things like this.
Right.
So
Fair. You don't want any TCY in it.
Yeah, exactly.
And my goodness, that would be the most I would imagine it'll be the most expensive purge compound there ever was.
I would imagine, yes.
That frozen yogurt just goes right through it. Awesome. Well, Dave, it's been really great having you on here. Love catching up. I forgot Mercedes, you don't know this, but Dave's nickname in college was Crazy Dave, because this is how his mind works, just hearing him go in all these directions, and they're all really impressive, because honestly, I feel like my brain goes in a lot of directions, but a lot of them end in dead ends. So Dave, it's been really, really nice to have you on here and just hear about, I've been hearing you talk about opening a company, what feels like forever, and now to see like the fruits of that is really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, and I want to come see your facility as well. We got to arrange a girls trip out, Lynzie.
We'll do a girls trip, and then you can hear me.
You can bring your spring break cup, Lynzie.
Yeah, I'll absolutely bring the spring break cup. I don't think I will, but I will.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, Mercedes plays us out.
I'll go ahead. Yeah, Dave White, thank you so much. And then if people want to get a hold of you, you have a website?
I do. It's extrufarm.com. And also my email is david.white@extrufarm.com, and feel free to reach out at any time.
And that's farm with a PH.
Correct.
Like cool. Fat. Yeah.
Pharmaceuticals.
Or pharmaceuticals. Yes, also that.
All right, fair enough. All right. Thanks, Dave.
Thanks.
Thank you.